Hey guys, it's Mr. Schauber back for our college basketball greatest players of all time, numbers 10 to number 1. Who will make our top 10? Again, this is my list. This is my opinion, but I think it's hard to argue that with any of these selections as far as just the greatness of the overall player. But the position they're in, the order they're in, can be debated. But these are my top 10 greatest players in college basketball history. Number 10, Elvin Hayes, University of Houston. Played forward and center at 6'9". He was a strong 6'9", 235 pounds, well built. Houston was great while he was there. 81-12 was the record that his team had for his 3 years. Uh, 31 points, 17 rebounds a game. He's 12th all time in college basketball history with 2,884 points scored. Had 52 games with at least 30 points, 25 games with at least 20 rebounds. Led Houston to the Final Four in 1968. And he was just awesome. In fact, in a game in 1968, regular season game, he outdueled Lou Alcindor in what's called the Game of the Century. And Houston beat UCLA in that game. And so, and you'll see where Lou Alcindor shows up on our list here. He's the only player in tournament history with at least 40 points and 25 rebounds. And he did that in 1968 when they went to the Final Four. Twice a first team All American and the AP Player of the Year his last year there. He's got his number 44 jersey retired by the University of Houston. And he would go on to have a tremendous pro career as well. Elvin Hayes is one of the great all around players that college basketball has seen, and he was a great pro. So, what a tremendous player he was. Number 9 on our list is Bill Bradley. Played at Princeton. He was a shooting guard and small forward. And you're thinking, what, number 9? How is he that high? Well, while he was there, Princeton was good. In fact, he led them to the Final Four, and he was the most outstanding player of that Final Four. As Princeton took third that year, that was 1965, his last year there. He averaged over 30 points and 12 rebounds a game. He was an over 87% free throw shooter. I mean, just a tremendous shooter. Had 11 games during his career with at least 40 points. Like I said, led Princeton to the Final Four. Princeton, okay, Ivy League to the Final Four in 1965. He was the AP Player of the Year that year in 65, as well as the Helms Foundation Player of the Year. So he was considered basically college basketball's Player of the Year, okay, in 1965. He was twice a first team All American in 64 and 65, and he won a gold medal in the 64 Olympics in Tokyo. So, I mean, Bill Bradley was awesome. He would go on to have a really good pro career as well with the New York Knicks, helping them win a couple of championships. In fact, the last time the Knicks won championships was 1970 and 73. And so, yeah, he was the guy to help them do that. But um, yeah, he was just fantastic. So Bill Bradley, and then after his basketball career got over, he got into politics and became famous for that as well. So there you go, number 9, Bill Bradley. Number 8 on my list is Bill Russell, University of San Francisco center, 6'10", and the ultimate competitor. Bill Russell is one of the great, not only college basketball players of all time, he is the greatest winner in pro basketball history with the most championships. Uh, at San Francisco, you can see their team record: 71 wins, only 8 losses. He was uh, one of those 6 guys who averaged at least 20 points and 20 rebounds for his career. He, like I said on here, revolutionized college basketball with his great defense and shot blocking. He was so dominant on the defensive end. Yeah, obviously a great offensive player too. But for how tall he was super athletic. And really, when they get to the pros, he and Wilt Chamberlain eventually are going to kind of be the only centers really that can hang with each other. because being that tall and that athletic. But uh, Bill Russell led San Francisco to two championships, two NCAA championships, 1955 and 56. He was the most outstanding player of the Final Four in 1955, and he was twice a first team All American and twice the Helms Foundation Player of the Year, both 55 and 56. He was just so dominant, and got eventually drafted into the pros by the Boston Celtics, and the Celtics really wanted him. Other teams, the Celtics didn't have the top picks. You know, they weren't picking in the top few slots, but uh, the Celtics coach um, Red Auerbach made some deals and moved the Celtics up, and they picked Bill Russell, and that was the best move he ever made because Bill Russell would then help his Celtics win championship after championship, okay, in the 50s and 60s. And so with Bill Russell, the Celtics became the most dominant franchise in pro basketball history. But Bill Russell was just awesome, so good, such a competitor, so fierce, and he just knew how to win. He was a winner. David Thompson had to be one of the most exciting players to watch in college basketball history, and he comes in at number 7 on our list. His nickname was Skywalker. This is before Star Wars, before Luke Skywalker. David Thompson was Skywalker. Why'd they call him Skywalker? Well, look at the picture on the bottom there. Because at 6'4", he could jump out of the gym. They said his vertical leap, his standing vertical leap, was 44 inches. So nearly 4 feet standing. While he was at North Carolina State, you can see what the team did at 79 wins and only 7 losses. 26 points a game, 8 rebounds. He had 33 games during his career with at least 30 points, and he helped North Carolina State win the national championship in 1974. He was the most outstanding player of the Final Four that year, and one of the rare 3-time first-team All-Americans in college basketball history. Um, his last year there, senior year, he was the Naismith Player of the Year and the Rupp Trophy winner. He was also twice the AP Player of the Year, both junior and senior years, and 3-time ACC Player of the Year. David Thompson was awesome. The crazy part about this, though, was for just as much as he could fly through the air, just the Skywalker he was, um, because of some, and we can talk about this in a few minutes, but because of some previous things that had happened and previous players, uh, college basketball had banned dunking. So you could not dunk in a game. You could lay the ball up, but you couldn't dunk. And so one of the great leapers in college basketball history played his college career without being able to dunk. Now, when he got to the pros, he could dunk, and he did plenty of that, and he was a tremendous pro player. But David Thompson, one of the exciting, electrifying players to watch in college basketball history. Number 6 is Larry Bird, Indiana State. Larry Bird was a tall, lanky kid, 6'9". He played forward. If you saw this guy walking down the street, you probably, I mean, he's tall, 6'9", right? But other than that, you'd probably think this is a goofy looking dude. I don't know what he does for a job, but he's not one of the great basketball players of all time. That's what you would think. Well, he was one of the great basketball players of all time. Not only could he wasn't super fast. He couldn't jump real high, but he was one of the great basketball minds of all time. He was great at anticipating. He could dribble like a guard. He could pass like a guard. Uh, he just knew where all his teammates were at all times. He was unselfish, and he is one of the great shooters in basketball history. He was deadly accurate. He was just amazing. Okay. Larry Bird's just one of the greatest players all around that we've ever seen. While he was at Indiana State, well, let's back up a minute. He was so good in high school and he was from Indiana, from the little town of French Lick, Indiana. In fact, his nickname became the Hick from French Lick. He got a scholarship to go to the University of Indiana, which was a powerhouse in college, coached by Bob Knight. And he went on full scholarship, but he only stayed in Bloomington, where Indiana University is located, for a couple of months. He just didn't like it. He didn't fit it. He didn't think he fit in. The town was too big for him. He was from a town of just a few thousand, and University of Indiana had 30,000 kids, and so he just said, no, I just this is not for me. And so he went back home to French Lick. His mom was so mad at him because his mom was a huge University of Indiana fan, and they were poor. He was dirt poor growing up. They were poor, and he couldn't afford to go to college if not for a scholarship, and he got that scholarship at Indiana. So his mom was so mad that he had left that. She didn't talk to him for like 2 months. He moves in with his grandma, and hearing that he had left University of Indiana, the coaches at Indiana State, which wasn't known for basketball at all, uh, they track him down in French Lick. They drive out to French Lick and they basically look for him and find him and try to talk him into a scholarship. Well, at first he says no, get lost, I'm not interested. And they persist though. They come back in the next week or two and they try to convince him to come to Indiana State in the little town of Terre Haute, and he finally agrees. And he will have to sit out a year because he transferred schools. So he's able to play his sophomore, junior, and senior years. And all he does is make Indiana State a basketball powerhouse while he is there. Can you imagine that? Uh, Over 30 points a game, 13 rebounds a game. Indiana State was 81-13 while he was there, including an undefeated season his senior year, all the way until the championship game. Uh, we'll talk about that in a second. He was 14th all time in scoring during his career in his 3 years. Junior and senior year, he was a first team All American, and his senior year, he swept all the awards Naismith, AP, Rupp, and Wooden. He was twice the Conference Player of the Year. And like I said, he led Indiana State, little Indiana State, to the national championship game as a senior in 1979. They lost to a Michigan State team led by Magic Johnson. And that's where the Larry Bird Magic Johnson rivalry began, and of course would be taken to another level in the pros, with Larry Bird playing for the Celtics and Magic Johnson playing for the Lakers. But Larry Bird he was always he was humble. He didn't like to talk to the media. He'd rather have his teammates get the attention. He just was kind of a shy kid in college, but he just was so awesome on the court, and he became the guy to watch his junior and senior year especially. Um, again, if you saw him walking down the street, you would not think he was one of the greatest players of all time, but that's exactly what he was, and he just amazing. Wow. So that is Larry Bird, and of course, he would go on to have one of the great careers in the pros as well, playing for the Celtics and lead them to 3 championships in the 80s and won 3 straight MVPs in the NBA in the mid 80s. He was unbelievable. So there's Larry Bird, number 6 on our list. Number 5 is Jerry Lucas, played at Ohio State, forward and center. Uh, Jerry Lucas was one of the great college players, especially in that era, early on. And so 6'8" and 230, he was a big, strong kid. Of course, would go on to have a really good pro career, but in college, he led Ohio State to a 78-6 record during his 3 seasons, 24 points a game, 17 rebounds a game. He led Ohio State to the national championship in 1960. They also went to the Final Four in 61, and he was the most outstanding player in both of those years, 60 and 61. He led the nation in field goal percentage all 3 of his varsity seasons, and led the nation in rebounding his junior and senior year. So he was the first player ever to win 5 individual national statistical titles in his college career, 2 for rebounding, 3 for field goal percentage. Um, had streaks of 38 and 24 consecutive double doubles, which means points and rebounds, averaging at least over 10 points and 10 rebounds in a game. Had 38 games in a row where he did that, and then 24 games in a row where he did that. He is a 3-time first team All American, twice AP Player of the Year, and 3-time Big Ten Player of the Year. College careers don't get much more accomplished than Jerry Lucas. Uh, just unbelievable. So that's why he's number 5 on our list. Number 4 is Bill Walton, the 7-foot or 6'11 redheaded center of UCLA. Bill Walton grew up in San Diego, but UCLA uh, by the early 70s, of course, they were the dominant college powerhouse, and they had been for a number of years. So he goes up to UCLA to play for the legendary coach John Wooden, and while he is there, all UCLA does is go 86-4 in his 3 varsity seasons. Uh, he averages 20 points a game, over 15 rebounds a game, and shoots over 65% from the field. He led UCLA to 2 championships in 72 and 73, sophomore and junior years. And at the Final Four, both of those years, he averaged almost 30 points and almost 18 rebounds a game. In the 1973 championship game, he had 44 points on 21 of 22 shot attempts. Can you imagine? And both those years they won the championship, 72 and 73. UCLA was undefeated. Perfect seasons, 30-0. First major college program ever to do that. So he was the most outstanding player in both of those Final Fours. He was a 3-time first team All American, sophomore through senior year, 3-time Naismith Player of the Year, twice the AP Player of the Year, and 3-time Rupp Award winner. So you talk about individual accolades, team accolades, accomplishments. Bill Walton has, as many as anybody else, and he was just so dominant. He was the epitome of an unselfish player. Loved to find the open teammate for, he'd love to set him up, for an easy shot. He was a great passer for a center. Very, very smart on the court. Um, he was part of UCLA's record 88 game winning streak. So they went almost 3 seasons without losing a game. His jersey is retired by UCLA in the number 32 jersey. Of course, Bill Walton got into broadcasting after his whole basketball career was done, and he's just he's an interesting guy to listen to broadcast. He's kind of crazy, but he had a really good pro career as well while he was healthy. His thing was he came into the pros, got drafted by the Portland Trail Blazers, and within the first few seasons helped Portland win a championship. And their only one. But then he started getting injured, and he would hurt his foot, and then his other foot, and he had all kinds of injuries, and so he became kind of an enigma in the pros. He'd disappear for a season at a time, or a season and a half at a time, or play a few games here and there. Had a resurgence though in the mid '80s when the Boston Celtics signed him. After everybody thought his career was pretty much done, after all these injuries, the Celtics signed him and he helped them win a championship in 1986. Maybe the Celtics' greatest team ever. Of course, they had Larry Bird and Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish and Danny Ainge and Dennis Johnson and all kinds of great players on that team. But Bill Walton, Bill Walton ended up winning 2 NBA titles with the Portland Trail Blazers in the 70s and the Celtics in the 80s. But yeah, I mean he was just so dominant in college that in fact his coach John Wooden, the most accomplished college coach in history, called him basically the greatest player he had and the most valuable player he had because he could do everything on the court. And so there's Bill Walton, number 4. Number 3 is Pistol Pete Maravich, maybe the most exciting player ever in college basketball. He was worth the price of admission in college and the pros. He played at LSU, and his dad had been a coach, and wanted him to go to LSU, and he did. He grew up in the South, and 6'5" guard. LSU was not a dominant team while he was there. They were good, but they weren't dominant. But he was the most dominant shooting guard that we've ever seen in college. And the most dominant scorer, individual scorer, probably we've ever seen in college. I mean, Wilt Chamberlain's up there as the most, maybe the most dominant all-around player, but Pete Maravich was probably the most dominant scorer in college history. 44.2 points a game for his 3 years there. he is still the all-time leading scorer in Division I history, and that was in 3 seasons. Of course, he would have scored more if freshmen could have played. He would have scored how many more points? And also, there was no 3-point line back then, so every shot was a 2-pointer, and he could shoot from the outside. So how many more points would he have scored if the 3-point line had been in play? He led the nation in scoring all 3 of his varsity seasons. He scored. This is an unbelievable statistic. He scored 48.2%, almost half of LSU's points during his career. He has the NCAA record for most 50-point games with 10, most 40-point games with 56. Well, yeah, he averaged 44.2 points a game for his whole career. He never scored fewer than 30 points in back-to-back games in his 3 varsity seasons. He was the AP Player of the Year his senior year, Naismith Player of the Year that year, 3-time first-team All-American, 3-time SEC Player of the Year. He would go on to have a great pro career, but a short pro career. He was injured as well some during his pro career, and he had some other issues going on. But man, in the pros as well, he was the guy behind the back, the no look passes. He could score from anywhere on the court. He could light up a basketball scoreboard, no doubt about it. He was awesome. So Pistol Pete Maravich, one of the greats ever. Number 2 on our list is the Big O, Oscar Robertson. Love that picture on the bottom there. That's one of the great pictures ever. He's like doing the splits after a rebound. University of Cincinnati for 3 seasons. Big guard, 6'5", 220. Also played some small forward. A lot of people think he might be the greatest all-around college basketball player ever. He could just do everything on a court and do it well. Cincinnati was awesome while he was there, 79-9. He averaged almost 34 points and over 15 rebounds a game during his career. So think about that, almost 34 points and 15 rebounds average every game, okay, for 3 years. He led the nation in scoring all 3 of his varsity seasons, and he ended up 9th all time in career points scored in college. First player to lead the nation in scoring in both his sophomore and junior years. I told you he led it all 3, but first guy to do it as a sophomore and a junior. 33 straight double-doubles. He wasn't just a scorer. He was a dominant rebounder as well at 15 a game, right? Good passer as well, good dribbler, played great defense, but man, he could score and rebound like none other. Twice the Helms Foundation Player of the Year, junior and senior seasons, 3-time first-team All-American, and 3-time first-team All-Conference player, the Missouri Valley Conference. His jersey, number 12, is retired by the University of Cincinnati. He just was so awesome. He would go on to the pros and play a long career and a very successful career in the pros, winning a title with the Bucks in the early 70s with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Lou Alcindor, who became Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on that team. But in the pros, he was considered, and still is, as one of the great, if not the greatest, all-around players ever to play. So that is number 2 on our list, Oscar Robertson. So who's number 1? Who is the number 1 greatest college player of all time? Well, here we go. Lou Alcindor earns the top spot on our list. UCLA center for 3 seasons in the late 60s, 7'2", 225 pounds, dominated a game from start to finish on both ends of the court. He was out of New York City in high school. Every school wanted Lou Alcindor. Every school was salivating to try to get this guy to come and play for them. He chose to go to UCLA, who had established itself as a dominant college basketball powerhouse. And all he does while he's there, this leads them to an 88-2 record. 26 points, 15 rebounds a game, shot almost 64% from the field, led UCLA all 3 of his varsity seasons to national championships, 67-69. He was the only player to win the most outstanding Final Four award 3 times. So all 3 of his years, varsity years, sophomore, junior, senior, he won the championship and won the most outstanding player award for the Final Four. he was just amazing, right? Twice the AP Player of the Year, 3-time first team All American. He was the first ever Naismith College Player of the Year. The first year they gave that award was his senior year. He was 3-time Helms Foundation Player of the Year, sophomore through senior year. Of course, his jersey is retired. He'd grown up in New York City. Like I said, everybody wanted him, and he chose to go out west and play for John Wooden. And you can't blame him. Uh, During his freshman year in 1965-66, of course, he could not play varsity back then, and so he played on the freshman team. And the UCLA varsity team was preseason number 1, okay, ranked. And so the freshman team plays this preseason number 1 loaded varsity team. But the freshman with Lou Alcindor beat the varsity team 75-60. It wasn't even close. Lou Alcindor had 31 points and 21 rebounds as a freshman against the varsity team. What the heck, right? I mean, I'm sure John Wooden is thinking, oh my gosh, if he could just play varsity. If he could have played varsity, he would have won 4 championships in 4 years, right? Uh, so unbelievable. Now, I mentioned with David Thompson, the Skywalker, a while back, that he could not dunk in college. College banned the dunk for a number of years. Okay, uh, in fact, basically a decade. And the reason why? Well, pretty much because of this guy, Lou Alcindor. The dunk was banned in college basketball after the 1967 season, after Alcindor's sophomore year, first varsity season, mainly because of how dominant Lou Alcindor was. The dunk was not allowed again until 1976 in college. So because of his dominance, they said, well, it's too easy for him. We can't let him dunk anymore. We can't let anybody dunk, And so that's what they banned that. Well, crazy, right? To think about that. But really, that might have been a blessing in disguise in some ways for Lou Alcindor, because he was able to not necessarily develop. He'd already developed, but he continued to develop and kind of perfect his famous sky hook, his hook shot. And with that hook shot that he used in college and then in the pros for 20 seasons, 20 plus seasons, he became the NBA's all-time leading scorer as a result of that. But he just was so unstoppable with that hook shot. And so, yeah, I mean, just he probably the greatest all-around player, certainly the most accomplished and dominant, winning all-around player that college basketball has ever seen during his 3 seasons. Alcindor changed his name in 1971 when he got to the pros to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar after he converted to Islam, and then he went on, like I said, to become the NBA's all-time leading scorer, and he still is. So Lou Alcindor, number 1 on our list, and it's probably pretty hard to argue with that. But again, all these numbers are opinions of mine. This is my list, but I just had to put Alcindor as number 1 because of just how amazing he was. And then here are some pictures. He had so many statistics, so many accolades. I saved his pictures for this page. There he is, dribbling the ball. I mean, that's the thing, is he could dribble, he could pass, but scoring and defense he was second to none. You can see in the middle picture there, there he is towering over Muhammad Ali, and then Bill Russell as well is in that picture. The top right, there he is with his legendary coach John Wooden. After winning a national championship, he's got the net around his neck there. Of course, one of the traditions is you cut down the nets after you win it, right? And so, and there he is doing the sky hook. That's the same picture on the far bottom left and the bottom right. It's just the bottom right one's a Sports Illustrated cover, but that's in the national or in the Final Four there against Houston. And yeah, there he is doing the sky hook. It was just unblockable. He's 7'1", 7'2", and he does a sky hook, and you can't block the shot, and he was just so deadly accurate with it. But there's Lou Alcindor. There you go, guys. There's our top 10 college basketball. Hope you liked it.